Welcome back, my friends. We have another wrap up today. Can't believe it's already June. I don't want to talk about it. I had a pretty good reading month. I read 8 books. Every single month I've read 8 books, which is crazy. That's pretty good for me. And I think that's just about how many I can do without completely burning myself out. So I'm doing pretty good this year. As far as ratings go, I think it was a pretty good month. There were some that were kind of like average rating and a lot of them that were like 4 stars and above. And I have another 5-star read. Let's get right into it. The first book that I finished in June was Oathbound by Tracy Deonn. It's crazy that I finished this in May. It feels like a year ago that I read this. It feels like such a long time ago, but I think that's because I read most of it in April and then I read like the last few chapters in May, so I counted it as a May book. If you don't already know, this is the 3rd book in the Legendborn cycle series. This is YA fantasy. This is obviously the 3rd book, so I'm not going to tell you the details of the 3rd book, but Legendborn is about a 16-year-old girl, Bree, who goes to an early college program, and there she gets entangled with this magical secret society that's based around the Knights of the Round Table. In Oathbound, we're obviously just continuing the adventures. This was my least favorite one of the series. If you don't already know, I gave Legendborn and Bloodmarked both a 5 stars. I can't decide which of those books I like more. I like them both equally, I think. I love those books. But Oathbound, I ended up giving a 4.25 stars, which obviously, especially for me, is a very high rating, but to me, it did feel kind of like a world of a difference compared to Legendborn and Bloodmarked. I think it was a really good addition to the series. It did have that feeling of like an in-between book, like I forget what they call it, like almost like a bridge from the 2nd one to the 4th one. It didn't really have like a lot of new things to add to the plot, I would say. It did feel like this was dragging on a little bit. I liked the addition of the new characters, and I won't give anything away if you haven't read this series, but if you have read this series, my favorite character was not in this book that much. So I think that definitely had an effect on my rating and how much I liked it, because I just really like this character and Bree. I understand why he wasn't so much a part of this one and why the other character kind of came back and had a comeback. And I will say, I definitely appreciated it. Now I feel like the love triangle is like very tense because I feel like she has strong feelings for both of these characters. I'm just babbling on. I just miss Cell, okay? That's it. And then I read The Last Battle by C.S. Lewis, which is the final book in the Chronicles of Narnia series. I've been working my way through this all year long. If you don't know, the Chronicles of Narnia is a middle grade series. It is about Narnia, which is a magical world, and these kids from our world discover Narnia, and they have a bunch of fun adventures in Narnia, and they go kind of like back and forth between worlds, and it's really fun. This one I ended up giving a 3 stars. I think I was going to say this one was my least favorite, but no. The Horse and His Boy was my absolute least favorite. That one was so freaking boring. There's kind of like 2 groups of kids, of like main characters in these books, and the original cast of characters, I call them the original ones because they are the kids that found Narnia in the first place. Lucy, Edmund, what's the other one? Susan and Peter, I think those are their names. I love them and I always want them to be the main characters, but then in like the second half of the series we kind of move on to these 2 other kids kind of becoming like the main characters, and I don't like them as much. Peter and Edmund and Lucy do come back at the end of this one, which I appreciated. I like that there was kind of like a wrapping up sense to this. But yeah, I really liked all of the books that had the original cast of characters in them a lot more. This book was also super racist, so that was very disappointing because the rest of the series didn't really show signs of that, but this one definitely did. It used some racist slang. So yeah, I was pretty turned off from this one. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the next book that I read because I am doing a full spoiler vlog that actually the first part is going to be out at the end of this month. So I'm not going to go like in full detail because you can see all of my thoughts as I'm reading it in this vlog at the end of the month if you'd like. But I read Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. This is technically the second book in the series, and I ended up giving this one a 4.25. If you don't know what Throne of Glass is about, we're following Selena Sardothian. She's basically a prisoner in this camp, and one day the crown prince comes and takes her out of the camp and brings her to the castle to be his champion in his father's competition to find a royal assassin. That's essentially the bare minimum of what happens in the first book. The story was definitely starting to pick up in this one, although I do feel like this one was a little bit slow for me. And actually, I kind of do feel like Throne of Glass was a little bit slow for me too. It's just typical Sarah J. Maas where like it's a little bit slow at the beginning, and then once you hit the middle or a little bit past the middle, it starts to pick up a lot and crazy things start to happen. So yeah, I will leave it at that. Definitely watch out for the vlog. Next, I read Every Precious and Fragile Thing by Barbara Davis. This was an in-person book club pick. My friend picked this one because she's read Barbara Davis before and she really likes a lot of her other books. In this, we're following a woman who works with troubled youth, and one of her patients actually ends up murdered. Similar situations like this have happened to her before, and she's really having a hard time with it. So her boss decides to send her on leave for the summer. She ends up going back to, I forget where her mom lives, somewhere on the ocean in New England. But her mom actually is neighbors to her ex-fiance's mom, and she doesn't realize that her ex-fiance is actually staying with his mom for the summer as well. It sounds very rom-com-y from how I'm describing it, but it does really have a lot of depth to it. I wouldn't even call this a romance. I think really this is just kind of like a fiction book in my opinion, with like a little tiny sliver of romance. And her mom is also a death doula, and we kind of get to see her mom's story and how she came to be a death doula. I ended up giving this a 3.5 stars. I enjoyed this. There was actually parts that made me cry. It was very emotional. There was a pretty good plot twist in this, I will say. I did not see it coming at all. There's a lot of grief in this one, but I will say if you have experienced the loss of someone very close to you, I think that this book will hit harder for you. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed this one, you guys. I did find it to be a little bit more slower paced, and I think maybe it didn't get a better rating for me because for some reason I don't know if it was because it was after Crown of Midnight and I was very stuck in like the Throne of Glass world or what, but it was just slow for me. But I think if I had known ahead of time like what kind of book it was going to be, I think I would have rated it higher. And then I read The Assassin's Blade. Yes, I did read this third. And I will say, even though I'm going to be saying it in the vlog, I wish I read this first. So many people said I should have read this first, and I was going to read it first for so long, and then on a whim I just decided that I was going to read it third. So if you're watching this and you haven't read Throne of Glass and you plan to read Throne of Glass, I suggest reading this first. This is the prequel. You can read this really whenever you want to. It's just our main character's backstory. It has 5 different little novellas in here, so kind of like 5 parts to this, and I really enjoyed it. I think I would have been like absolutely devastated by this if I had read it first, but because I read the first 2, I kind of knew a little bit about Selena and like what happened to her in the past. Whereas if I had read this first, I wouldn't have known anything about Selena, and I think it would have hit a little bit harder. Then I read Water for Elephants by Sarah Gruen. This is a historical fiction. We're following Jacob, and his parents pass away right as he's about to take his last exam for vet school. And when he goes to take the exam, he just can't do it because he's overcome with grief. So he just walks right out of the exam and actually just starts to walk. He doesn't know where he's going. He's just following the train tracks. And then hours later, a train actually ends up coming by and he hops on the train on a whim, and it ends up being a circus train. And he gets kind of wrapped up in all of the circus shenanigans, and then he ends up actually becoming the vet at the circus. It sounds like a very fun book, and it is fun, but this is also very, very heavy and very intense, actually. I gave this a 5 stars. I'm absolutely obsessed with this book, and I'm obsessed with the movie. I watched this movie when I was a teenager, and ever since I was a teenager, this has been one of my top favorite movies, like in my top 5. It's so freaking good. Sometimes when I think about historical fiction, I think that maybe it might be a little bit slow, but for this, that is not the case. This is seriously like action-packed. So much is happening all the time. There's really never a dull moment in here. The found family is absolutely exquisite. Love it so much. The animals, love them. I really just cannot say enough good things about this, you guys. I highly, highly recommend picking this one up. So good. Definitely check the trigger warnings though, just in case, especially if you are an animal lover. I actually read Water for Elephants and these last 2 books that I'm going to show you in a reading vlog that I did last week. So if you're interested, definitely go check that out. But the next book that I read was Scythe by Neil Shusterman, or Shusterman, I'm not sure. This is the first book in a trilogy. This is YA dystopian. We are in a world where humanity has figured out all of the causes of death. There's no way for anyone to die in this world. And if something happens to them where they do like die, they can just bring them back to life. So they have these people called scythes who actually basically are population control, and they go around killing people. In this world, you can literally only die by scythe. There's no other way to die. And we're following Citra and Rowan, who are apprentices to a scythe, and we are just basically following their story as they learn how to become a scythe. But some crazy stuff starts to happen like midway through. Like a bunch of tiny little plot twists happen, which I really enjoyed. I ended up giving this a 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. The first half, I will say, was difficult for me to get into. And I'm not sure if it was because I had just read Water for Elephants and that was a 5-star book and I was still just like reeling about how good that freaking book was. It was definitely a little bit more difficult for me to get into for some reason, not because of like the writing style. Like the writing style was easy. It just felt very slow in the beginning, but things changed a lot in the middle. Things really did pick up. Like I said, a bunch of plot twists happened, and I ended up just really liking it, honestly. And even thinking about it now, I'm like, do I want to give this a 4.25 actually? Quite possibly, I would rate this higher than a 4 stars. I'm going to leave it at a 4 stars for now. But yeah, really, really enjoyed this one. I can't wait to pick up the second one. And the very last book that I read in May was An Anonymous Girl by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. These are the same authors that wrote The Wife Between Us. If you've ever read that, I know that's a more popular book. In this, we're following Jessica, who's a struggling freelance makeup artist. And she's really struggling for money. And she goes to a client's house one night, and her client is talking about this study that she was going to participate in, and it pays $500, but she decides that she doesn't want to participate in it. And so Jessica goes behind her client's back and actually takes her spot in the study because she needs the $500. When she ends up going to the study, they put her in an empty room with just a computer, and the computer starts to ask her questions. And as she answers the questions, they begin to get more and more personal until whoever is behind the computer ends up actually asking her to come back. And she continues to come back until she ends up meeting Dr. Shields, who is the person behind the computer. And from there, some crazy stuff starts to happen. Jessica starts to become a little bit obsessed with Dr. Shields, and then she starts to become kind of scared of Dr. Shields, and then Dr. Shields is kind of obsessed with Jessica, and a very, very interesting domestic thriller, in my opinion. It's very twisty and turny, but I will say that it was a little tiny tiny bit predictable. And there was like so many twists and turns that I think it lost me a little bit sometimes, because I started to get a little bit confused, not in like the good way where it's like, oh, what's going to happen? It's like, what is, like, I don't even think I'm following the storyline right now. I did end up really liking this one. I gave it a 3.5 stars, but as I'm thinking about it, I think I might up my rating to a 3.75 stars. I don't normally rate thrillers very highly, so I feel like a 3.75 for a thriller is actually pretty good in my books. I would love to know what you guys read in May. Have you read any of the books that I read? Drop your favorite read from May down below, because I would love to know what you guys are reading. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me as always. Check for my socials down below. I'm very active on TikTok mostly. Follow me on Fable. But until next week, guys, bye!